Fox News alert, it's been 48 hours since Trump was nearly assassinated again. And tonight, we still don't have any answers. Had an assassin with a scoped rifle get within 300 yards of the former president just weeks after Butler? Why wasn't the club's perimeter secured ahead of time? The Secret Service was aware of the opening in the shrubbery, so why didn't they address it? Why wasn't an agent stationed there before the round? Homeland Security has 80,000 armed agents, more than any other department. Where were they? Mayorkas oversees the Secret Service. Why the Disappearing Act? And how'd the shooter know exactly where to be if this was an unannounced foursome?
I am reaching the point of total outrage because the response from the Department of Homeland Security has been totally lacking. In fact, I think it's tantamount to stonewalling in many respects. If necessary, I'll certainly support a subpoena.
So the first case is full of dozens of errors, most of them human errors, and someone needs to take responsibility for that, and I don't think they have had adequately. The Secret Service has not accepted responsibility yet for these failures. If a guy can hang out for 10 hours with a semi-automatic rifle, 100 yards from where the president's playing golf, that's a problem.
The Biden-Harris administration wants you to keep your nose out of their business. Former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy says the feds are waging a prosecutorial turf war with the state of Florida to keep total control of the case. Why? Because Biden has his fingerprints all over this.
The former president's protective apparatus allowed for the early identification of the threat and led to a safe evacuation. The increased assets directed by President Biden were in place yesterday.
That's the Secret Service director admitting that President Biden is personally involved in Trump's security detail. Joe Biden, the man who can't protect our border, has gotten personally involved in protecting Donald Trump. Biden's directing which assets Trump's allowed to have and not allowed to have. The same guy who raided Trump's house is in charge of protecting his life. The same guy who calls him a threat is in charge of protecting him from threats. And Trump's been shot twice, almost twice. If Joe Biden really wanted to provide Donald Trump with proper security, he would. But after 2 assassination attempts, there's still gaping holes. The Biden White House still labels him a threat. I guess it all makes sense. Why would you protect a man you consider a threat?
Every leader, national leader, or any leader in this country should be calling out political violence and bringing the country together, not dividing it.
Just to be clear, just to clarify, so you're saying that the president and vice president believe that former President Donald Trump should be toning down his rhetoric?
So I'll say this. President Biden has been clear-eyed about the threat that the former president represents to our democracy. He's been clear-eyed about that.
And after repeatedly being called a wannabe dictator, a threat to democracy who needs to be eliminated, the former president of the United States has survived 2 consecutive assassination attempts, and his political rival, who is now taking a personal role in his security detail, continues to call him a threat.
It's been only 2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it.
They're putting a target on Donald Trump's back and saying Fox asking questions about it's dangerous. Who's threatening who here? It's dangerous to ask questions in America now. When did this country become like this? A hardcore Democrat with a Biden-Harris bumper sticker came this close to assassinating the Republican nominee for president, and the media is blaming Republicans for radicalizing him.
Let's stop this both sides stuff.
It's a bunch, yeah.
Because it's not correct.
Right.
It is not both sides. It is one clear side. And you can point to many, many reports. You can point to all kinds of stuff that's been reported. You guys have to pull it back. This is not us or them. This is you got to stop doing what you're doing.
We went from the country needs to tone down the rhetoric to just one side does. The side who someone's trying to kill. The victim needs to shut up and take it. CNN says Trump had it coming.
Donald Trump, as Essie said, and it's absolutely true, he created this specter of political violence that we all now live under, and he lives under it too. And so it is his rhetoric that has been, creating this environment for the last 8 years.
The New York Times says Trump seems to inspire people to make threats or take actions both for him and against him. Where have we heard this before? She made me hit her. I didn't want to hit her, but she made me do it. She just wouldn't stop talking. Or look at the way she was dressed. She was asking for it. Democrats aren't condemning political violence. They're justifying it, just like they justified the Black Lives Matter riots. It's systemic racism's fault, and it's mostly peaceful. Don Lemon says if Trump doesn't want to get shot, he should just shut up.
So if Donald Trump wants Kamala Harris and others to stop saying that he is a threat to democracy, then he should stop threatening democracy.
They're putting a gun to Trump's head and telling him to stop running. That's how they got rid of Biden. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. With Biden, they just threatened to nuke his presidential library and invoke the 25th. With Trump, they're saying assassins are going to keep showing up if you don't bend the knee. What they want Trump to do is stop telling the truth. Stop talking about illegal immigration. Stop saying you want peace in Ukraine. Stop fingering us for rigging debates. And stop telling jokes because people like you too much. And more than that, stop whining about almost getting shot. Biden makes up stories about getting shot. Trump gets shot, but he's not allowed to talk about it. The Atlantic says no other president has used an assassination attempt to inflame American politics the way Donald Trump has. Well, that's because JFK didn't survive. 2 crazy women tried to shoot Ford, and Reagan was shot by a lunatic trying to impress Jodie Foster. Neither men had been treated the way Trump's been treated. Blaming Democrats for Democrats shooting you isn't inflaming. It's called accountability, something Democrats aren't used to because the media doesn't do its job. Tens of millions of Americans fantasize about seeing Trump tortured, bankrupt, and humiliated. They have emotional issues and project them onto society. It's not our fault they need to get it together. Someone wrote a great book about that. Answer this question. Have the Democrats shown us that they don't want more bad things to happen to Trump? The left doesn't seem scared about what might happen to Trump. They're more scared of how Trump reacts to it.
You hear this fight, fight, fight chant, which you heard Trump do right after the shooting in Butler. We saw that once again on Truth Social. That does scare me a little bit.
They're not scared of Trump getting shot. They're scared of Trump getting back up and fighting. It scares them that no matter what they throw at him, and he keeps going. Even after assassins surround his rallies and his golf courses, he keeps going. Trump's not a danger to the country. They know that. He's a danger to them. He's a danger to their status, their control over you, and a threat to expose the dirty deeds they've done. The Trump agenda for working men and women threatens the entire Democrat coalition that's kept them competitive for decades. CNN's already been pulverized by America First. No ratings, no respect. ABC World News Tonight, after David Muir's biased moderation of the debate, has lost over 10% of its audience. The Biden family legacy has been obliterated after a single debate. The Clinton dynasty, that's in tatters. And Donald Trump didn't defeat his opposition with lies and lawfare or bullets. He won it fair and square. This is a fight for survival, and these people aren't going to stop.
I don't understand why it's so difficult for the press to have a consistent narrative about how dangerous Trump is. They should cover the object. Well, the object in this case is Donald Trump, his demagoguery, his danger to our country and the world, and stick with it.
They aren't going to stop, and neither's he. And here's why.
You wonder why it gets shot at, right? You know, only consequential presidents get shot at. But what can you do? You have to do what you have to do, right? We have to be brave.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.